Welcome to Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, the podcast that gives you an unfiltered, behind-the-scenes look at what it's really like being a woman in the middle who's over 50 and following her entrepreneurial dreams. Grab a superhero cape, girlfriend, because you deserve one. I'm your host, Master Certified Life Coach and Midlife Mentor, Suzy Rosenstein, and I am excited to inspire you with interviews that feature all of this midlife amazingness. Let's go. Hey there, welcome back to the show. We have a really exciting interview ahead of us today about defining what the ladder of success means to you. Today, you're going to be meeting Candy Motzek, a woman in the middle entrepreneur who's 62 and has been a business coach for life coaches for 8 years now after working as a senior leader in corporate. She's also the host of She Coaches Coaches. Welcome to the show, Candy.
Oh, Suzy, thank you for having me.
I'm so happy too. Thanks so much for joining us. And I know we're going to have a great conversation about your being a midlife entrepreneur story. We're going to be talking about your business and what's going really well, and also what midlife issues might be getting in your way to some extent and are challenging you in your life as well as being a business owner. So let's get started with you telling us a bit about your story of how you became a woman in the middle entrepreneur.
Okay. So I am the product of a lot of women entrepreneurs. My grandmother was an entrepreneur as a single mom. My mom was also an entrepreneur. She had an accounting business for years and years before she retired. And so it was a natural progression. So entrepreneur in the blood.
I love that. I love that you just grew up with it. I also love that you're Canadian. It's so fun to speak to other Canadians on the podcast. And so when you were growing up, did you realize that most of your friends' parents weren't entrepreneurs, or were they? I don't think that they probably weren't.
No, they weren't. And also most of the moms were not working.
Oh,
so that was an unusual thing. I grew up in a well-to-do neighborhood, and there was a lot of moms who spent their day playing tennis at the club and doing all the things. And my mom worked, and she worked a lot. So that was really different.
And you noticed that as a kid?
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally.
Wow. And when just thinking back, when you were a kid, did you just assume you'd be an entrepreneur?
No, I think there was 3 acceptable professions. It was doctor, lawyer, accountant, and then I went for the 4th that was deemed acceptable, which was engineer. But, and I know you laugh, but my dad was an immigrant. He came from the Caribbean, and education is super important. And as a daughter, he wanted to make sure that what I was going to do in life meant that I would be safe and secure. And
Sure.
Those were the careers that they understood. They came with some, respect, and they knew that you could always get a job. You would always be able to take care of yourself.
Wow. So tell me, what led you into corporate? What was kind of your trajectory first, and then how'd you get to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I did, when my kids were little, I had my own business for a while and then let that go because I was working really hard. I was making money, but my profit was like tiny. Then things got tight for us financially. And I thought, oh, heck, I've just got to go and get a job. So I already had my degree, and that sort of gave me enough reputation or the ability to say that, yeah, you could actually learn something and do something. So I went and I got a job as a part-time admin assistant. And
not even as an engineer.
Nope. An admin assistant in a corporate real estate firm. And I worked my way up. And so just worked my way right up from that admin assistant role, which was a super fun role, to being a senior leader. It was great.
And how come not engineering? Did you lose interest?
The type of engineering that I did was geological. And that meant I was going to start my career, dropped off from a helicopter, probably in the Northwest Territories, which is almost close to the Arctic Circle. And they were going to drop me off with my lunch for the day. And then I was going to be there doing whatever the heck I was going to do. And then they would pick me up at the end of the day. And it sounds kind of exciting, except that in my last year before I graduated.
Does that sound exciting? I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but that's not the whole story. The other part of the story is that in my last year before graduating, there was a grad student, and she had had a role very similar to that. And she was mauled by a bear. And honest to God, like, she lived, she recovered, But that scared me so badly that I was like, holy crap, I don't want to do that. And so there you go.
Oh my God, you should see my face right now. I mean, you can see my face because we're on Zoom. I'm having a little flashback to when I was in high school and I thought, well, first I wanted to be a graphic designer. They don't like a commercial art is what it was called back in grade 9. But then like I love everything about marine biology. And it's one thing to fall in love with rocks, minerals, and engineering. Yep. It's another thing. And for me to fall in love with, I love whales, I love fish, I love aquaria, all that stuff. But then I was thinking, well, what will that mean? Gee, I'll be in a boat. I like boats, but how am I going to meet people? How am I going to, like, what kind of a lifestyle is that on a boat? Even though it sounds romantic, and yours sounded kind of cool, but that's so funny. So when you were focusing on that branch of engineering, it didn't occur to you what your actual lifestyle would be like?
No. No. And then the other part of it is that because there was all the field work, most of the people that I graduated with, it took them a long time to have a long time relationship with somebody. Right. And that's what I wanted. And I wanted to have kids. And so, the fear combined with the, I guess I finally got mature enough that I woke up and said, okay, this is actually not going to work. So there you go.
Oh, that's great. See, as an older and wiser woman, we don't think like we used to think when we were picking, majors and being in our late teens, early 20s and stuff like that. Exactly. That's hilarious. And being in Canada, I'm sure, especially with you on the West Coast, we know a lot of people, probably, I know I do, who went tree planting. That's like the common denominator for people who want to make a lot of money and go do something that sounds cool, and they get dropped in the middle of nowhere with their lunch.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. And when I hear stories like that with my kids' friends now, like, whew.
Yeah, scary, right?
So you ended up on this other path and you enjoyed it.
I did. Yeah. It was great for the longest time until it wasn't. Yeah.
And tell me about when it wasn't great and when you started to think, I want to be an entrepreneur.
Okay. So when it wasn't great was because I had terrible boundaries. I am very short. I'm
how short are you?
4'11". Actually, I would say I was 4'11" at my highest. So I don't know, maybe 4'10" and a half now.
We're the same.
Really? Okay.
Yes, I'm also 4'10".
Very short, colored woman in corporate with a lot of very tall blonde men.
Oh my goodness.
So that combined with not very good boundaries, I was like a yes person. You want me to do that great new stretch assignment? Yeah, I'll do it. So I kept doing that. And then there was just not enough emotional support, too much need to work harder, faster, save money. And it just started to tell on me. Then there came a time where I led a fairly sizable team. And my role was to make sure that as the leader, that they were well cared for. And I wanted them to know that I always had their back and that they could rely on me. And then it was time to clean house, and to choose some of those people to lay them off was just very difficult. And so I spent a lot of time fighting and saying, well, this doesn't work. And how are we supposed to get the job done? And things led to things. And eventually I burned out. And so that was not fun. And that was that pivot, right? The pivot of like, this life, this career doesn't align with my values. And I had always wanted to be a therapist, but that was because coaching didn't exist in those days.
About how old were you when you realized that you burned out?
It was 2013. So I would say 10 years ago. So 51. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was it. It'd probably been coming for a long time, but there you go.
Uh-huh. And so you wanted to be a therapist. Coaching wasn't a thing. How did you learn about this idea of being a coach and how that might work for you?
So I found out that I had always been in a coach-like position. Didn't matter what role I was in. When I was an admin assistant, when I was an exec assistant, people would come into my office and close the door and sit down and then say, do you have a few minutes? And it didn't matter at what level I was on the corporate ladder. Everybody, junior, peers, senior people showed up and then I found out about coaching and I realized I think that means that I kind of have an affinity for that. So then it was time to go back and get trained, get my credential, and start to practice.
When you were thinking about what that might mean for you with the next step, were you thinking, I'm going to not only be a coach, but I'm going to be an entrepreneur? Or were you thinking of working for somebody else?
No, definitely. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd had enough of the corporate politics and that environment. So I knew it was a time for change for that. And coaching was, the right thing for me. I could just feel that. And so it was how to make that switch and working an exit plan and putting that plan together. Yeah.
Wow. And you were right on track, 50-51.
Right? Yeah.
Right on track. Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your business and how you started to choose what area of coaching you wanted to work in.
Yeah. So I did my coach training, and there was a really great opportunity to be sort of like a volunteer coach for other new coaches that were starting up. And I just loved working. So I think that was really where it started. And then new coaches started to seek me out and said, hey, I could use some help getting started. And I'm a pretty practical, business-minded person. And so that was, it was kind of a simple way of combining coaching with a real practical business hack. And so that way I get to do both. I get to help people do those systems that are not obvious to everyone, but then I also get to coach them on what's going on in their life, about everything, so that they can create that dream that they want.
And it sounds like you love the decision you made.
I do.
Yeah. What's your favorite part?
My favorite part is one-on-one coaching, in that moment where you're having a conversation and you're just holding the space and there's a connection, and they kind of take this inhale and they go, and they see something different, and they see that possibility of what's there for them. I love that. Just love that. Just to watch that.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. When I started coaching, I wasn't even using Zoom for coaching with clients. I was using a teleconference line, and you could hear that moment, but you're right. It's way better to see the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I used to telephone coach as well. And it was the same thing. There's something different about the pause that happens. It's not the pause where they're thinking. It's like a real,
there's air.
I would say stunned silence is the way it starts. And then it kind of evolves somehow. So
yeah, there's more air. It's not, sometimes it's a gasp, but it doesn't have to be a gasp, or a sigh. It's like a combination. There's something that's
hard to describe.
It's such a beautiful moment. It's like somebody's head is exploding right now.
Yeah.
I love that. That is really, really fun. Okay. And now, as an entrepreneur and a happy, successful entrepreneur, midlife is happening all around you. So talk a little bit about what is going on for you with, classic midlife shenanigans or stuff, or a lot of it you can't control, but like life is happening. What did it look like for you?
Mm-hmm. So for me, my health is really great. And so I'm fortunate that I don't have those kinds of challenges. And menopause was not terrible. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. And I'm well through that. And for the menopause part, I just used to sort of take it a day at a time. Every hot flash, I would just kind of breathe and have a sip of water. So that part worked. The thing that I find challenging is the relationships. So my peers, my spouse, we're all aging at the same rate, but I'm ready to go. And they're ready to shouldn't we retire and just go for casual lunches together and just socialize? And I'm like, it's like there's this gap between wanting to keep growing and wanting to keep going and wanting to be satisfied with where. And that's
why your application to be on the podcast jumped out, because this is really something. And I relate to what you're saying. It's go time. It's grow time. It's like you're just getting started. You're excited. Yeah, right. Exactly. And not everybody is in the same place. And tell me a little bit about how it is showing up for you with your peers, as well as your spouse, because it may or may not be the same. So what's going on with your friends, your peers?
Yeah. So friends, it's different for sure. Is that for example, we went out for dinner last night with some friends, and they are slower, would be the word. Not in a bad way, but they have less drive to do the next thing. And they spend more time focusing on just the like kind of what used to be instead of what could be.
Uh-huh.
So, and I hate to say this because, even though we're the same age, they feel older. And I think it's part of the not growing intentionally. They read lots of fiction and they watch TV and they hang out with friends, but they're not like taking on a new hobby and expand it. They're not trying a new physical thing. They're just kind of doing day to day. And it feels very boring to them.
Are they happy?
They are. They say they are. And that's also uncomfortable because then it's like our values are shifting, right? Like to me, I said it sounds boring. Like when they say, oh, I don't even know if today's Monday or Wednesday. I'm like, ew, like, just gross, right? And that they are happy. And for me, it just sounds, yucky.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate what you're saying because it's not that you're not wishing. Of course, you wish them well, and it's lovely that they're happy. But you're having some thoughts and judgments. And I wonder, are you also thinking about thoughts and judgments they may be having about you?
I think so. I'm less concerned about that because on that side, I can see that can be a way a relationship develops. Like we can still have commonality. We can still have, times that we get together, but maybe not as frequently. So there is judgments in a way. Like I do wish them well, and I am happy that they're happy. It's just so not what I want for myself.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting when, having younger families, you're with people that generally are on the same page. Like we're not all the same, but the goals are more in sync when there aren't, and when there aren't these like foundational pieces of our lives that look the same anymore. Anything can go. And people, like some people dream really big, and that's something that's really different. And then some people don't dream at all. And and they seem okay with it, but like you're not in that space. So I could totally see how that's challenging. And what about with your spouse? How's that going as you're gearing up?
Yeah, so he is still working, but honestly, I believe the only reason he's still working, he's also self-employed, is because I sort of insist that he does. and the reason that I laugh about it is he's very physically fit and he wants to do a whole bunch of stuff. And to be able to afford that, to be able to live like we did when we were in our 40s or 50s, we need to have cash flow. And so there's that. So, but he would love to be retired. He would absolutely love to be retired. And he's starting to realize that I probably won't retire in that way. And so, for example, we're going for a month away, heading down south for a month, and I'll still work 2 to 3 days a week. And that's kind of like, it'll work, but there's stress attached to that too. Like I kind of want to be with him only, but then I also want to make sure that I'm not leaving my clients in a lurch, sabotaging my business growth, all of that. Right. So there's that. It's like a pull. That would be the way it's like a pull.
That's great. I mean, it's great that you're clear about it. It's not great that you have the pull, but I think it's realistic and it's very honest. So you're not completely not on the same page, but there's a gray zone that has to be navigated. It sounds like.
That's right. Yeah. And he's very, like, he gets it that a lot of the work that I did in corporate, that there was a lot of times that I was not happy. And he knows that I love what I do. And so that's, like he's trying to navigate that idea too, where all of a sudden when you're 55, you're not supposed to just say, hey, I'm retired and pull out your plastic white chair and sit out front by your RV and that's it. Like he knows that that's not the life that we're going to have together. And like I said, fortunately as well, we're very physically active and physically fit. So he can still go and do so many physical things that like hiking or biking or whatever. So that part is good. It's in the working, do you work or not work? That's the place where it's.
Yeah, it is really interesting to think about that. Last summer, I had several friends who were teachers and retired. So, that seems to be a profession where people can retire a little bit earlier if they started really early. And I was just watching this happen. These are people I've known for over 30 years. And I wasn't even jealous because I'm very happy working. I mean, I would like to, I'm not exactly sure what the ideal scenario is for me. I'm open to that changing over the years in terms of how much work, just what you were saying. But I don't even know. I'm looking forward to seeing how they manage it because they don't think about pulling out a white chair next to the RV either. Right. So it's just very interesting what retirement means to people. And as entrepreneurs, I don't know if we think about it in the same way.
Yeah. And, so the only parallel that I've seen to this is people in academia, so there is a different approach to retiring, I think, for profs in that they continue often to write. They might write another textbook. They might continue to do research. And I've never really looked at that. They may teach one course, and that is completely acceptable. And so maybe there's a bit of a parallel there with, how entrepreneurs can move into a different phase, not 80 hours a week or 40 hours a week, but, an amount of time and a contribution level that feels good for them.
Exactly. And also depending on the goals, your income goals and how you learn and grow as an entrepreneur, it may be different in a couple of years than it is now, right? As we continue to evolve. Yeah, that's really good. Really interesting. And I'm really glad you brought up relationships because in midlife, for a lot of reasons, relationships get identified as things that need work, often because we haven't been as intentional as we want to be because of the demands of the family and career, typically, right? And then so now it's just another wrinkle of how relationships need work because they are our goals are different, yet we still care about people. we want to make sure that we're still connected. So without being careful, there can be a big disconnect, that's for sure. So this has been so interesting. What would you say is your biggest piece of advice for entrepreneurs who are amazing women and also in midlife?
Allow it. Allow that you can do it. And I think this whole thing about just giving yourself permission to continue and to know that it's okay to be like in the goo of, I don't quite know what this is going to be like. Maybe we're on the, forefront of evolution here. And that 5 years from now, there's going to be a whole community of people that say, yeah, I've been through the same thing. Maybe it's just part of the process. So allow it.
Oh, that's so good. Instead of fighting it and being freaked out by it, allowing it and being a little bit more curious about it. That is awesome. So tell us what's the best way to get a hold of you if anybody wants to follow up?
So the easiest way is to listen to my podcast, and it's called She Coaches Coaches. It's on all the players. And every episode, there's a way that you can check out more about me. But people who listen to podcasts like to listen to other podcasts. So I highly invite you to come and listen to me there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Candy, for taking the time from your day and sharing all of this, putting a spotlight on the challenges that relationships can be going through at this phase of life, being a woman in the middle. So good. So important to think about. You're amazing. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I so enjoyed the conversation.
All right. That is it for now. If you're listening and loving what you hear, please like and subscribe. Reviews are also great too and much appreciated. And if you're a woman in the middle who's 50 or over and a six-figure entrepreneur and would like to come on the show, please go to www.midlifeinterviews.com and fill out an application. We'd love to have you on to share your story. Thanks so much for listening. It's never too late for you to put yourself on your agenda. I'm Suzy Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you again soon. Now, real quick before we say goodbye, if you are connecting with this show, I'd love to invite you to a happiness breakthrough coaching session. It's my laser-focused coaching call that will help you get clear about what's getting in your way as a woman in the middle entrepreneur and confident about your next steps to more happiness in your next chapter. Head over to www.nextchapterbreakthrough.com. Talk to you soon.